Radio Maria now presents Meet the Author with Ken Huck, a program designed to take a look at Catholic literature and chat with authors from around the world. Now, here's Ken Huck.
Thank you for joining me today on Meet the Author here on Radio Maria. We have a lot happening today, and I'm going to kind of rush through this first part quickly. We, of course, doing the Spring Mariathon, but we also have a special guest. Rich May is joining us. Rich is not only an author with a new book, but he's a former Radio Maria presenter, and he predates me, so we're going to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane with Rich. Like I said, we're having the Mariathon, so you know that means I have books to give away for pledges of $50 or more, and I'll run through the titles in a minute, but if you're near a computer or your cell phone, just jump over to Meet the Author Facebook page where you can see a list of titles, and if you call 888-408-0201 early, you'll get your first choice. You can also go to radiomaria.us and donate online. This Mariathon's a little bit different, and some of you are probably thinking, didn't we just have one of those back in Lent? Well, yes, we did. Well, this one is, and that was strictly for Radio Maria here in the U.S. This one is part of the world family of Radio Maria, and it also, there's a special activity going on. And if you listen to Father Dan Rehill's program on Tuesday, he told you about the Radio Maria Center and Chapel that we want to build in Tennessee. And so the first $25,000 of this fundraiser is going to go to that project. And by the way, I should mention, we have, I think, just almost $11,000 of matching funds so if you call in with your pledges will be doubled. But like I said, this one's a little bit different, so there's also giving levels, and there will be plaques, I guess, that we put into the chapel. If someone gives $1,000 or more, you can be part of Mary's Army. $2,000, it's Mary's Hands. $5,000 up to $15,000, it's Mary's Arms, and Mary's Mantle is $15,000, and then for $25,000 plus, it's Mary's Angel. So if you really are feeling very, very generous, we'd love to have someone who steps up, donates that $1,000 here during the next hour, which will be doubled, and a plaque will be placed in the chapel for you. And so anyway, call 888-408-0201. We're 100% listener supported. And let me run through very quickly these books, because I want to get Rich on. I've been looking forward to talking with him to hear about what the days were like in Radio Maria that even predates me, and I've been around since 2011. I think I'm coming up on my 14th year here in a couple weeks. The first three books I have, they're all, if you are a fan of Pope of Karl Ratzinger or Pope Benedict XVI, the first three books are either by him or about him. And the reason we haven't covered these here on the program, because these are all from Ignatius Press, and the spokesperson for these three books is Father Fessio, and he's always saying Mass at the time this program is on every day. He's out on the West Coast, so he does a new Mass. But the first one is by Robert Cardinal Sarah, who's fantastic, and the book is titled He Gave Us So Much, and it's a tribute to Benedict XVI. The next book is by Cardinal Ratzinger, or Benedict XVI. It's called The Divine Project, Reflections on Creation and the Church. And the third one is Benedict XVI, What is Christianity? The Last Writings. Then I have 2 copies each of the following 2 books. Sophia Institute was so great to send these extra copies to us. They are both about Mother Cabrini. And of course, the film came out a few weeks ago. And in conjunction with that film, Sophia put out a couple books. One is the biography of Mother Cabrini. It's The World is Too Small. It's the life and times of Mother Cabrini. I love this book. I had no idea everything that this woman accomplished. Fantastic story. If you like reading autobiographies, especially of a great saint like Mother Cabrini, I have 2 copies of that, and again, from Sophia Institute Press. Then Sophia also put out the Mother Cabrini Companion. It's a spiritual journey with the courageous woman of God, and it's her writings where you can. It's kind of like a mini retreat where every day you can read some of the writings from her diaries. And I have, again, 2 copies of that. Then, I'm sorry I'm throwing these on the floor, but I have to make room on this desk. Persecuted from Within, How the Saints Endured Crisis in the Church is by Joshua Charles and Alex Torres. It's a great book talking about people who, at the time they were around, they came under persecution, but then later became saints. It's a really interesting book, and we talked to Joshua Charles about that a couple months ago. We have a book from another book from Sophia, This Present Paradise. It's a spiritual journey with Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity, and it's by Claire Dwyer. And I don't know too much about it, but if we have anyone out there who has a special devotion to Saint Elizabeth of the Trinity, give a call, 888-408-0201. Another book, it's Betrayed Without a Kiss. It's by John Clark, and it's on defending marriage. We talked to John. This is an excellent book, nice hardcover book, so you can call and get that one also. Then the one and only Dr. Ray Garendi, he was with us a couple months ago with a book titled Standing Strong, Good Discipline Makes Great Teens. This is a great book for parents, soon-to-be parents, for teachers. It talks about discipline. It's a very humorous book, but it gets the point across. And Dr. Ray should know he has 10 adopted children, so he knows a little bit about discipline to keep order in the house. Another book we didn't cover, and it's again from Sophia. It's The Paths of Evil, Conspiracies, Plots, and Secret Societies. It's by Professor Roberto Di Mate. The only reason we didn't talk to him is because he's in Italy, so it was a little difficult setting up that interview. But I paged through it. It's a very interesting book. And last but not least, like I said, Rich May is with us today, and he has a book. It's actually a workbook. It's titled Addressing Moral Confusion, and it's got probably the longest subtitle I've ever seen on a book. A pre-apologetics parent-teacher-student workbook that addresses the moral confusion and cultural relativism of our youth that our youth will face. We're going to talk to Rich about this. We're going to talk to him about his days of being associated with Radio Maria and being a presenter. So, again, call 888-408-0201. And to kind of get things started, I mentioned we have matching money. I think we've got $10,000 out there, but I'm going to throw in $100 out of my pocket. So the first person or persons who donate the first $100, your match will actually be tripled. So that first $100 will raise $300. $100 of the matching money we already have, plus $100 from me. So if a person calls up and donates $50 or $100, we'll immediately be off to the races with $300. So let's talk. Let me tell you a little bit about Rich. Rich is a former Air Force pilot. He's a retired aerospace engineer like myself. He has a Bachelor of Pastoral Theology from the University of St. Thomas in Houston and a Master of Arts in Theology from the Franciscan University of Steubenville. He has authored several books, including The Rosary, A Prayer for All Christians, and recently he produced a three-booklet rosary series to teach Native Americans the Rosary. And I think what makes Rich qualified to write this book we're going to be talking about, he has 30 years experience teaching catechesis at all levels, and he's developed catechetical materials for both students and teachers, including baptism and confirmation programs that are used at parishes both within and outside his home diocese or archdiocese. And over 10,000 copies of his popular CD on the Eucharist have been distributed nationally by the Mary Foundation. And Rich gets around. He averages 8,000 miles a year, driving to make presentations and giving retreats. He has presented programs and retreats in over 40 parishes across the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston. He's spoken at conferences and retreats from around the nation. He's a member of the Ecumenical Society of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the Mariological Society of America, and International Marian Association. He has appeared numerous times on EWTN TV and radio, contributed programming to the Houston Catholic Radio, and I'm sure the highlight of his was his weekly program on Radio Maria for 6 years, and he continues to be a guest on many of the programs. With that, Rich, welcome back to Radio Maria.
Boy, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a blessing and joy to be associated with Radio Maria. Thank you very much.
Well, when I found out that the Mariathon was coming up and you'd reached out to talk about this workbook, I said, well, this is a match made in heaven, because Rich, he's been a Radio Maria presenter, so he knows all about the Mariathon, so he knows we might have some interruptions during the next 45 minutes or so. And I just thought it would be fantastic to have you on, especially we retired aerospace engineers. We kind of need to stick together, don't we?
Yeah, that's true. Poor as we were when we had that profession. And it doesn't get any richer in religion, does it?
No. Well, I need to mention something that's kind of exciting. Rich, when he worked for JPL, he designed a part of the spacecraft, Voyager, that is heading out of the galaxy. What's it like to know that you helped develop something that is literally leaving our galaxy and flying across the universe, Rich?
Yeah, I know. And to have parts of that in your hands, knowing it's on that spacecraft, and I think it's over 5 billion miles out there now, it's something to reflect on.
Yes, it's exciting, and you and I both saw I know just last week that the Voyager it's been up there for, what is it, 2 decades? And it's still
mid 70s they were launched.
Okay, so it's even longer than that, and it's still calling home occasionally.
Yep.
Before we get to your new book, I wanted to take a little bit of a walk down memory lane with your involvement with Radio Maria. I think you told me you started your program in 2006. I didn't come on board until 2011. How did you become involved with the network?
Yeah, well, in 2006, 2007, we actually had a program here in Houston on Maximilian Kolbe radio, but the station, after a year or so, did not make it, and the priest who was working with me thought about Radio Maria, so we drove on out to Alexandria and met with the staff, the program manager and everything, and we came up with the program that extended from what we had already in Houston. But after about a year, by the time we get to 2008, I just always have had an affinity to our Blessed Mother. That's really my area of expertise. And so I thought it would be great to have a program just on Mariology. And so that's what we proposed, or I proposed in 2008, and that program lasted to 2012. And, Mary's a great topic to talk about in Mariology because it connects to so many other things. Because really, it answers a lot of questions and other issues. Like, for example, why do I pray to Mary? Well, it isn't really about Mary. It's actually a question about the relationship of the living and the dead in Christ. Why do Catholics worship Mary? It isn't a question about Mary either. It's concerned more on whether or not Catholics practice idolatry, or what does the word honor really mean? And you could go on and on. So it connects to a lot of other things. And I was also privileged to have some special guests on during that time, which is one of the good things about Radio Maria, who they invite on. One of the people on my program that I interviewed is now Bishop Sis out in San Angelo. He, at the time, was the pastor up at Texas A&M, their Catholic Center up there, which was still is very successful in producing the vocations. So, it was a great opportunity to work with the station and hopefully contribute a lot to it on the way.
Yeah, I still have to pinch myself after doing well over, I guess doing this for 12 years, 50 programs a year, over 500 programs. I still have to pinch myself every once in a while with some of the people I get to talk with. I got to speak with a couple bishops. Next week we actually have retired Archbishop Hughes, former bishop of New Orleans, and it's still exciting. I mean, some of these people who I used to go to conferences and see them speak, and now it's a privilege for me, and it's one of the reasons I've been doing this. Talking to well over 1,000 people over the years. It really is a blessing, hopefully for the people who listen, but certainly for us presenters, isn't it?
Yes, very so. And we learn so much because you get different perspectives on things.
Yes, hardly a week goes by. I learn so much about our faith. It's it's endless. It is endless, whether you're talking history or theology. Of course, we love talking to people who've converted or reconverted to the faith. It really is a great opportunity. And speaking of guests, I failed to mention this. Father Dan Rehill, our priest director, he announced, I think yesterday, that next week he's going to be talking to this member of the Kansas City football team who's getting quite a bit of flack for what he had the audacity to say at a Catholic commencement ceremony, I think at Benedictine College, and he is taking arrows from every direction, and our own Father Dan Rehill gets to talk, the privilege of talking with him next week. That should be an interesting program here on Radio Maria. So great guests we get to talk with. When I came on board back in 2011, I think that there was certainly, I think there was less than 100 radio stations in the entire United States. I want to say there was like 60 or 70, and now there's something like 600. When you started back, even predating your association with Radio Maria in 2008, when you were on in Houston, that had to be one of like 50 stations in the entire United States?
Well, you make me feel like the tribal historian here in the covered wagon days. But
we're talking. We're talking less than 20.
I pulled out this card. It's in the pocket in my truck. I know I had it in there in 2008 because I drove around. I would check to see what station I'm near, and I'm looking at the Radio Maria card now, and there were only 7 stations on there. There were 1, 2, 3, 4 in Louisiana. You also had Anna, Ohio, Springfield, Ohio. And, of course, in Texas, we had Port Arthur. So, I mean, that's it. Of course, now many more stations. But, it's not just the quantity of stations, I think. It's the quality of Catholic radio that's improved over the years. And that's really important, So, again, compliments to all Catholic radio, of course, and how much they contribute to knowing the faith and be able to articulate the faith.
Well, the number one mission of the church is to evangelize. And, that's kind of almost a dirty word for some Catholics to evangelize. And, for a long time, us laity, we kind of left everything up to father or sister to spread the faith. And I think one of the great success stories where the laity has certainly got involved is the founding of these Catholic radio stations. And like you pointed out, when you were with Radio Maria as a presenter, there were 7 stations. I think we're up to 13 now. We basically have doubled, since here in the last dozen years or so. And a large part that is due to laity involvement, raising money, helping obtain the towers. And, I guess I bring that up because we are having our Mariathon. So I hope people are calling in and continuing that mission that is so important for the church. So speaking of mission, we need to talk about your book now. It's actually a workbook. So why was it important for you to put what is obviously a huge amount of effort into writing this workbook?
Well, I think I myself and many others, especially parents, are concerned what is happening today in our culture, in our society. Statistics show that many of our youth today, after they leave home, leave our parish community and so forth, many of them leave the faith. They lose their faith. And parents, I see this in parents all the time, very frustrated and don't know how to reach their kids. Their son and daughter go off to college. Then soon they get the phone call, Mom, I don't believe in God anymore, or Dad, I'm a socialist now. But what's wrong with living with someone? I'm not hurting anyone, and on and on. See, so by and large, our youth that grew up, they had Catholic education, no doubt, in their parishes, some basic education, supplemented hopefully by their parents. But reality, once they leave the fold and they go into an institute of higher education or place of employment, everything they've learned fast becomes a morality of opinion. Mm-hmm. So perhaps they'll be able to wade through all of that and still defend and remain true to the Catholic faith, but many of them don't. And this pop culture can truly have an influence on their lives, It has the potential to affect their behavior, their perceptions of things. But the reality is, without God and religion, you don't have moral truth. You have moral opinion. And every opinion forms an exception to the true principles of morality. So all of this is on my mind. The relativism and subjectivism that's going on, that pervades our society, makes it very difficult for our young people to remain Christian, let alone Catholic, So this is on my mind, and I think it's on the mind of many parents, and that's really what I had in mind when I tried to put this together as a help aid to parents and teachers.
I've heard people who do a lot of retreats. They travel the country giving missions at parishes, and they always have a Q&A session. And almost without exception, they tell me that the most often asked question is, I raised my children to be faithful Catholics. They went through the sacraments. A lot of cases, they went to Catholic school. We went to Mass every Sunday. And, of my 5 children, none of them now practice the faith. What can I do? Or more often than not, parents are saying, what did I do wrong?
Exactly.
It's heartbreaking when people hear this, especially in it used to be, grandparents were concerned about their grandkids. Now it's parents. And so it's definitely needed. And You've been a teacher at all different grade levels, so kids. You did it. You've done it for 30 years. What have you seen in those 30 years of teaching youth, being involved in youth ministry, being involved in catechesis? What has really been the big change that you've seen?
Yeah, well, the big thing is the denial of moral absolutes. It's not a popular thing today to have moral absolutes. Everything is up for discussion, even the deposit of faith. And then you see transgenderism, for example. Back in the Enlightenment period, I was thinking about that today. Back in the 1700s, you had reason that took front stage over our faith and over reality. Okay, and that was denied. But now, even reality is being denied. Again, just transgenderism as an example. And St. Thomas Aquinas taught truth is the conformity of the mind with reality. And this means that reality exists that we don't make ourselves. And it's a reality that cannot be otherwise by our own will. And without a grasp of reality, the very notion of God and existence and a moral morality, it disappears eventually. So I think this is one of the big things right now. Everything is under question right now. So I would say that's one of the big ones right there.
Well, again, for our listeners, if you just joined us today on Meet the Author, we're talking with Rich May, a former Radio Maria presenter, but also author, and he has a new workbook titled Addressing Moral Confusion. And I should mention, if I didn't before, I have a copy of Rich's book to give away. We're having our Mariathon, so if anyone calls in and makes a pledge of $50 or more, I'll send that out. And it's a great book well, let me ask you, Rich, was the audience for this, was it homeschooling families? Was it Catholic schools? Was it, PSR programs, youth programs? And also, what age group did you have intended for this workbook?
Yeah, good question. Really, it's designed... obviously, you want to target the high school youth before they head out, so to speak. That's the primary group, but certainly even younger grades. In fact, one of the large parishes here in Houston is already using it in class and for 8th graders. There are principles within this that can be taught at a very early age. For example, the very first chapter on morality of opinion, where do you get your information from? Do you believe everything you hear? I mean, you can teach an 8th grader that. See, so the advantage of the way I've got it laid out here is that a parent or a teacher can pull out what they need. They can do an entire section here on a particular topic, but there are particular principles that they can use and teach at younger grades as well. But again, the target has to be the later teens.
And with that in mind, not every lesson would necessarily need to be taught. In other words, a teacher could go through this and say, I'm teaching 7th and 8th graders, so we're definitely going to hit this, this, and this. With high school, you'll maybe cover more of the topics in that book. But if you're teaching, say, high school, is this set up to be like to be covered throughout a school year, or is like our PSR program that usually meets once a week? Will it take them, 4 months, 5 months? What's your thoughts on, how many classes that
Sure.
it would take to go through the book?
Sure. There's a lot of room for creativity. You sort of hit on it, depending on who you're talking to and this and that. It can be integrated into an existing curriculum. You're talking about moral theology today, kind of like what you're saying here, and you say, this is a good point to bring up here on this or that. There's a whole section on logical thinking. These are other aspects too. Certitude. Do I want certitude? And what I believe, these kinds of topics can really penetrate different areas of study at a particular time. Sure, you can make a whole seminar on it and show up on a weekend and cover through the whole book, but I think as a tool, think of it as a tool. You go out in your garage and work on your car, you need this tool or that tool at a certain time. I think that would be probably the best way to think of the book. There's exercises and worksheets you can pull out, repeated in the back. You can pull them out and use them in the class to supplement and help in the aid of the teaching aspect of it by teachers or parents.
Well, we're coming up on the bottom of the hour. Normally we have a short music break here, and I'm going to use just the next couple minutes to, again, talk about the Mariathon, and we're going to get back. I have some more questions for Rich about this workbook, but again, we're having our spring Mariathon. We have matching funds. I threw out an additional $100 at the beginning of the program, so that would triple your money. If you're one of those first people who makes a pledge up to the first $100, but all the rest of it, I think we have almost over $10,000 in total matching. So you can be guaranteed of at least having your money doubled. I also ran through at the beginning of the program about 10 or 12 different books that I have to send out for anyone making a pledge of $50 or more. Again, just call 888-408-0201. And as Father Dan said, yes, we it feels like Groundhog Day. It feels like we just did this a few weeks ago, and we did. We had our big Lent Mariathon, which was extremely successful. So thank you for that. This one is in conjunction with World Family of Radio Maria, and they choose the date. So all the Radio Maria stations throughout the world are doing pledges this week to raise money for the Radio Maria network. But also a portion of this funds we're raising this week will go to this Radio Maria Center and Chapel up in Tennessee that Father Dan talked about earlier this week on his program Battle Ready. So call 888-408-0201. The operators do have a list of the books, and they'll keep track of what has been given away or not given, what's available. So here's and we'll take any amount. You don't have to donate $50. If you want to donate $5, $10, any amount is just fine with us, and have that amount of money doubled here. And again, 888-408-0201. And so I want to get back and talk some more with Rich May. And if you missed the first part, Rich not only has a book that we're talking about, a workbook, but he's a former Radio Maria presenter. So we in the first half hour we got his experience of being on the network back when we only had 7 stations. Now we're up to I think 13 now. So let's return and talk a little bit more with Rich. Rich, you talk about in your workbook, you talk about the morality of do no harm, and that has become something that has been very prevalent in the way people make moral decisions now. And I'll let you explain what that morality is. And then I have a favorite story I've told at least a couple of times here on Meet the Author from Dr. Janet Smith, her experience with how young people think. So what is the morality of do no harm?
Sure. There's more to morality, obviously, than physical harm or fairness. And a practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others certainly is a positive quality. But today, this is mostly aimed at members of one's own group, and therefore those that also have a shared morality, and these can often put the needs of the groups and institutions first, subordinating the needs of individuals. I think this really comes about in a very early stage of development. Children recognize, when they're very young, all of us here, there are rules that can prevent harm to others. The moral understanding becomes a bedrock of absolute moral truth, that harm is wrong. But this carries on then to adult life, where adults now look into harmfulness as the method for identifying moral actions.
Yes.
But as you know, participating in an evil act, an immoral act, does do harm to others. You're harming others because sin causes pain in the body of Christ. And when we sin, we weaken the entire body, the body of Christ. So there is harm to others as well. So we have to look at it a little bit differently here, because and also, if you're a Christian, you presumably you care about the spiritual health of others. You don't just ignore someone who's in sin or conducting some evil practices and relegate it to something private, the new do no harm attitude. So our culture, our secular culture, I think, is very naive and cunning in its thinking, suggesting that sexual expression outside marriage, take that as an example, our neutral forms of body pleasure are left to individual choice. Looks like this is the slavery of addiction that our Lord warned us about. So, this is something that we have to get away from, is to try to bring people to the realization that evil acts like this, immoral acts, do harm other people. That's the best way I can do it in a concise way.
Yes, the way I've always, kind of heard explain, as you said, the way people are making moral decisions now is, for instance, let's use the example of recreational drug use. The attitude is, well, I'm not hurting anybody. Well, the answer to that is, well, you're hurting yourself. But I would also argue anybody who uses recreational drugs, you are as guilty as the cartel is for the murders that are going on south of the border and here in the United States. You are contributing to murder. So state, you are doing harm to other people. And so you're right. And what always comes to mind every time I hear this is years ago, I heard Dr. Janet Smith, who taught for years at University of Dallas. She said she would have these conversations in her college class, and they would try to agree on, see if the students in the class could agree on anything that was truly immoral. And this always stuck with me. She said the only thing that they could come up with were three items: slavery, rape, and parking in a handicapped spot if you're not handicapped. That was it. Everything else was fair game when it came to morality. So that's what it gets reduced to, is when you take that approach is, well, I'm not really hurting anybody, then pretty much everything is up for grabs when it comes to morality, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And so we're going to have to sort through ways of being able to pull them out of that and try to recognize that there are other impacts to what you're doing, your actions and so forth. Yes.
Well, you talked about these handouts, and this was probably one of my favorite parts of your workbook. Early on, and by the way, the book is set up so that there are these kind of master pages. For those who are teachers, you know all about masters, where you can pull out the page and take it to the copy machine and make a copy for all of your students. Early on, and you mentioned this, there's these 20 questions and it's where the students by themselves go through and they declare whether or not each of these statements is a fact or an opinion. And for instance, it starts out, Mount Kilimanjaro. It's the highest mountain in Africa. Is that a fact or is that an opinion? That one's pretty easy. And then you talk about the Empire State Building, water temperature, what temperature water boils at. Then you come up with Goodnight Moon is the best children's book ever written. So all of a sudden you throw that at us. You also ask the question, is Michael Jordan's feet too big? And it gets and then starts to get even tougher. Are all religions are pretty much the same? Is that a fact or opinion? Let's see. The earth is warming. Let's see. There was one here that really caught my eye. Like George Washington was for slavery. And, that's kind of a hot topic right now. So have you handed these out yourself to some of your students? If so, what was the reaction when you gave them this list?
Well, I haven't, but as I said, that school on the west side of Houston has been using them in the class, and all I got back was the principal of the school, actually, that told me all that. Incredible discussion that followed, and the way people think about things. A lot of it is culturally driven, too. You can make the excuse, well, in one culture it's okay, and in another culture it is not. These kinds of things. And of course, so I used everyday examples like what's the capital of Amsterdam, when in fact there's more than one there that people would miss. But then the really tough ones, with regard to all the churches, just the same, like you said, the sexual exploitation of children at a very young age is immoral. Is that true or not? So there are things mixed in here that actually breach the subject of morality and the way people think. Was it unjust for the Nazis to persecute the Jews? Believe it or not, some people say, well, back in those days, culturally, it was okay. You see what I mean? So these kinds of things are flushed out when you put this on paper and let the youth discuss and work. And of course, you want to put it always back in terms of Catholic theology and morality is what you're aiming at here.
Well, which I'm glad you brought up the persecution of the Jews, because the next copy master is even more provocative. There are 15 events on this practice, and you ask the students to rank them 1 through 10, 10 being the most evil and 1 being the least evil. So there are these 15 events. So again, the students they have to rank them. So if it's the most evil, they give it a 10. And you start right off. You hit the ground. The Holocaust, and then you move on to using poison gas in World War I, or Bonnie and Clyde robbing banks, human trafficking, public schools teaching lies to children. Let's see, pushing another student into the pool, gambling away your family's retirement money, verbal abuse from a husband to a wife. Yeah. I think adults would. I would love to hear the discussion that comes out of it. So underpaying your employees so that they can't pay their bills. There's a lot of. Yes. I try to put things in of current. Because, kids have a lot of grasp of these issues today more than we think, and they hear all of this. So you need to put some of those in there as well, that they have heard or are aware of, not just more, more traditional or other aspects, things. I think having those in front of them as well help them a lot too, I think. Well, I think what would be interesting is don't show them the entire list to start with. And just say, it's kind of uncover each item up on the board and have the kids write down what the rating is. So you immediately start out with the Holocaust. And if somebody doesn't put that down as a 10, being evil, I don't know what's going on in their mind. Yeah. And then just kind of start to uncover, these different ones. And I think you could spend about 3 days in a classroom even with adults arguing about these things. So again, that was one of my favorite parts of this book. Again, for our listeners, the book it's a workbook, Addressing Moral Confusion, and it's a pre-apologetics book for parents, teachers, and students. It's a workbook that addresses the moral confusion and cultural relativism of our youth that our youth will face. It's written by my guest, Rich May. By the way, Rich, where can people buy this? And also, there's a bulk discount available too. So talk a little bit about where people can get this.
Sure. Well, simplest, you can just go on Amazon. Amazon, Addressing Moral Confusion, without even my name, and it'll pop up. Or Addressing Moral Confusion, Rich May. That's the quickest way. It's only $20, and I don't get any profits from this, so it all goes back into the book. It's reasonable. But also, if you go to the website of the publisher, Enroute Publishing, ENROUTE, Enroute Publishing, Enroute Books and Media. It's Enroute Books and Media. There's more information about the book, a couple of other programs, podcasts that have been done, and also a poster. So you can get more information on the publisher's website. Enroute is out of St. Louis, a good publisher up there.
By the way, I went to their website, and I was really impressed with the books that they had, and they weren't a publisher I was familiar with. I think I'm going to have to get in touch with them for in the future.
I was so blessed to have them because it fit right in. I see books on there for homeschoolers, and that would work well in there too. And so, yes, exactly. I was really a blessing I had visions of it being in Ignatius and all these major, but you know what? This has worked out perfectly. God put this just where we need it, I think.
Well, and what people can also do is go to your website, which I put out on the Meet the Author Facebook page, which is simply havetruth.org. And you have a link there off of your website, and it'll take you to the publisher. So if anyone is interested in doing a bulk order, then I think it's a 20% discount. Also, if you want a really good deal, call 888-408-0201 if that book is still available. If they make a pledge of $50 or more, I'll send this book right out to them. So what a deal! They can get their pledge done, they can get their pledge doubled, and they'll get this great workbook at the same time. If no one has already asked for it, I haven't been getting any updates here. The person running the board said he's heard the phone ringing, but he doesn't know what's been taken and what hasn't been. Speaking of your website, as I mentioned, you average about 8,000 miles a year, traveling around, giving parish talks, parish missions. Is the website, your website, the best place at havetruth.org, the best place for people to contact you if they're interested in having you come?
I have to admit, I need to update it. It's had a few years where I haven't gone back to that, but my critical information, my bio data, all of that information is there. In 2016, I drove to Fairbanks, Alaska from Houston and gave a program. Those days are sort of fading now. And as I get older, my range is getting shorter and closer. So, of course, you can always do things online, Zoom, that type of thing.
Well, I also should, Radio Maria's recently reworked the website. It looks fantastic. And, if you go to the Radio Maria podcast, which I encourage everyone to do, so if you like today's program or any of the programs on Radio Maria and you miss part of it, you can always listen to the podcast. But they have a picture of me from, I think, about 12 years ago. And I was looking at that the other day because I go, they really need to get the picture off my Radio Maria or Meet the Author Facebook page. The guy in that picture is a little bit different. He has some more gray hair.
Mine goes back 15 years. I don't have dark hair at all anymore.
I can still remember.
It's just laziness. It's not that I'm trying to hide what I look like.
Well, yeah, I didn't update my picture on the Meet the Author Facebook page until just a couple years ago. That photograph was like 10 years out of date, and I go, yeah, we need to We need to update that. And so another way to keep Rich and I from getting more gray hair is call 888-408-0201 and make your pledge to Radio Maria so we can stay here on the air and keep bringing you programs so we get to talk with great authors. And, where else are you going to hear, about these workbooks? Like you said, Rich, you did not have a big-time publisher. You didn't have Ignatius or like Sophia, who, have full-time publicists, which is great. And they've been great to work with. But one of the things that a publicist does is, reaches out to people in media to get the authors on the air. And I heard about you and your workbook because you actually sent an email to the studio, Radio Maria studio there in Alexandria, and they forwarded it up to me. And I said, well, this sounds like a great guest to have on, especially because he was a former Radio Maria presenter, and he still comes back and does shows for us. So, you kind of had to do all that work yourself. You didn't have that publicist out there working for you too much, like some of the bigger publishers.
No, it took quite I guess my English and grammar isn't that good sometimes, and so I did have quite a few people read it when it was finished. It took me 4 months to write it, but getting it through the archdiocese here, we had them review it, and then it, of course, trying to get the publisher and all of that. It took a while, much longer than just the time it took to write it. But, so you go through that process. You want it to be clear and the best product you can, and that's what I tried to do. And I think people will find it very useful and flexible, too. You can use it in different ways, I hope.
Yeah, I don't think, grammar and writing ability was ever at the top of a lot of engineers, best.
No, that's true.
I mean, I'm horrible to this day. One of the best inventions, and I consider it a gift from God, is word processors and spell checkers. If it weren't for those, I would be embarrassed constantly. Well, I still am, but
I'm afraid to read it. I might find a typo. I don't want to know about it now. There's certain words. I mean, I'm a terrible speller. Terrible speller, and. But matter of fact, I was going to ask you about this. Every time I think about having done this program, and I don't know if you ever had this thought, here you are, former Air Force pilot, you are a Radio Maria presenter for 6 years, you're writing books. I don't know about you, but, I've always was, very introverted. And so when my friend Mary Piper, who many of our listeners know, when she approached me about doing this program a dozen years ago, I said, oh, no, I could never do that. And I said, what if I recorded it? And she goes, no, it's got to be live. And I said, and, yeah.
And, every time I read where St. Paul writes how God uses the most imperfect people he can find, because anything, any good that comes out of them can only be attributed to the power of God and the Holy, the Holy Spirit, because it's certainly.
I always say God must be desperate to pick people like me, or
Rich. That's exactly the way I feel. I'm going, well, God, any success that comes out of this program can only be attributed to the power of God. As a matter of fact, I don't know what it was like in your days of working with Radio Maria, but we used to have a lot more technical issues than we do now. We still have a few problems occasionally, but in the past we had dropped phone calls, we had internet drops, we just had lots of problems because, we're talking going back, 15 years, 10 years, and things were, there were just issues. And it used to upset me. When we'd have a drop call, you have a great guest on and the call would drop or there would be a bad connection. And I started taking the approach that Saint John the 23rd, Pope John the 23rd took. He used to, at nighttime, he would say, well, God, Jesus, it's your church. I'm going to bed. So that's kind of that's the way I approach when we have technical problems. I go, Blessed Mother, this is your network. I'll do what I can do,
Right.
but it's up to you to make this happen. And so
That's right. That's the attitude. That's the attitude you have to have. You're doing the work as best you can for our Lord and His Mother, and Saint Joseph. I was trying to throw him in there, and we need to just think in that terms there and do the best we can. And it's just like anything else. You say something, you want to respond to someone, you're evangelizing, you walk away thinking, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? But, God takes what we have and uses it, and you don't know what is going to be the outcome. But you just give it your best shot and let God's grace take care of it,
Exactly. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to use the last couple minutes here to, again, talk about the Mariathon, but I also want to talk about the guests we have coming next week. We have an Archbishop.
Oh, sure.
Retired Archbishop coming
in. Listen, thanks a lot, Ken, for having me. And all of you out there, Radio Maria people, God bless you all. It's a great station, great Catholic radio station, and hang with it and support them. That's all I can say. And I'll be sending my check in there, Ken, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rich. That was Rich May. I hope you enjoyed this last 45 minutes we had with him. Check out this workbook, Addressing Moral Confusion, especially if you're a homeschooler, if you're a teacher, if you work with youth. And, you may not do the whole program, but I guarantee you there's things in this book you're going to use. We talked about those discussion pages that you can hand out to the students. I think those things alone are worth the price of this book. And I don't know if anyone's claimed it or not, because I do have my review copy. And I was very careful. Usually when I get a review copy, I mark it up with a highlighter, and it's all kind of a mess when I'm done. When I get this, I said, I want to be able to give this away. And so I would love to be able to send this out to one of our listeners if it hasn't already been claimed. And I hope you would use these last couple minutes here to call 888-408-0201. I'll probably get the books out as early as tomorrow, so you would have them sometime early next week, hopefully. But call 888-408-0201. All monies are matched. I think we had a total. We started out with $25,000 this week. I think a little over half of that is gone. Last I heard, there was between $10,000 and $11,000 remaining of matching funds. Yes, I know that we did this in the season of Lent, and so maybe you could make even a smaller gift. $5, $10 is fine. Just call 888-408-0201 or go to radiomaria.us, and just use your credit card. It's very secure. And but if you do $50 or more, I'll say some of these books that I'm giving away. They're hardback books. Some of them are like $30 books. I don't think any of them are less than about $20. Books have gotten so expensive. So here's a great way to get a book for yourself or to give away to somebody. Put it in your parish library and make and our contributions are they're eligible for tax deduction. So 888-408-0201. Also, let me talk a little bit about who's coming up here in the next couple weeks. So next week, Archbishop Emeritus Alfred Hughes. He is going to be talking about a book he's written called Spiritual Masters, Living and Praying in the Catholic Tradition. We're also having, he was, I think, Archbishop of New Orleans. And also Baton Rouge. He was Bishop of Baton Rouge, I believe, is what I read in his bio. So some of our listeners may know him. We're also having Susan D. Bartoli, and she has a book titled Welcoming the Holy Spirit with Padre Pio. I actually read this book a couple days ago, and I thought I knew everything about Padre Pio because we've had a couple guests who've written books about him. There's some things in this book, there's quite a bit in this book I've never heard of before. So it's going to be great talking with Susan next week. First week of June, we have Dr. Scott Hahn. He's going to be on with us. And we have a guest coming up at the end of May. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but his name of his book is Reaching for Heaven, 14 Spiritual Goals as You Grow Older. So as I grow older, it's probably a book I need to read here in a couple weeks. So call 888-408-0201. Keep us on the air. I know people love Father Dan's Battle Ready program. He has every morning at 9 Central, 10 o'clock Eastern. If you miss it, you can always download it. And he is just a wonderful priest director. We're blessed to have him. He's trying to build this Radio Maria Center up there in Tennessee. And like I said, we're just blessed to have him. And as I mentioned, He talked about this earlier today. Next week, he has a guest on, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, and he is taking all kinds of heat. He's a strong Catholic. He gave a commencement speech at Benedictine College, and he said some stuff that I think most of our listeners would totally agree with, but it's not being well received out there, either by the NFL or all the commentators. He is getting, well, just listen next week, and I'm sure you'll hear. Or if you want to know what he said, it's everywhere out on the internet. Just go Google what he said, and you'll probably agree with all of it or 99% of it. But he, unfortunately, he is very Catholic, so he's taking a lot of heat. So it should be an interesting program. So this program, Father Dan's, we couldn't do it without your support. So I hope you call 888-408-0201. Make a pledge, make a small pledge, any size, and let's finish out this Mariathon strong and help raise the money for the Radio Maria Center and Chapel. And also, if you're a major donor, I ran through these. You can get a plaque put in the chapel. Depending on whether you donate anywhere from $1,000 up to $25,000. There's different kinds of giving levels, and of course that'll be matched. Well, if you donate $25,000, it won't be matched because we only have $11,000 in matches. So, but you can donate all the way up to $10,000 or $11,000, and that'll be matched $1 for dollar. So that'd be great if somebody calls. Will you call during this program here in the last couple minutes, or call Father Dan's program? I assume he's going to be on tomorrow morning. I think it would make his month if you called up and made that $10,000 donation. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's program with Rich May. I certainly did. It was great hearing about his experience doing a program on Radio Maria. And until next week, goodbye and God bless. Hallelujah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Radio Maria podcasts. It's thanks to listeners like you who donate that enable us to continue delivering quality content to listeners around the world. If you'd like to contribute and help us keep spreading the message of Our Lady's Son, please consider making a donation. You can reach us at 888-408-0201 or simply visit our donations tab on our website at radiomaria.us. Your generosity truly makes a difference. This has been a Radio Maria production.